Hey again, Professor Z. Let's look at some paragraphs from the first chapter of Outliers, and I think one of them is also from the introduction, and just see how these paragraph patterns work in practice. So this first paragraph here is an example of a topic sentence followed by supporting detail. Okay, I took this from page 18 of Outliers. And it says in the autobiographies published every year by the billionaire slash entrepreneur slash rock star slash celebrity, the storyline is always the same. Our hero is born in modest circumstances and by virtue of his own grit and talent fights his way to greatness. The rest of this paragraph is going to provide examples and supporting detail that supports that claim. So it starts with a supporting detail in the Bible. Joseph is cast out by his brothers and sold into slavery, and then rises to become the Pharaoh's right hand man on the strength of his own brilliance and insight. And then it follows that up with a second example. In the famous 19th century novels of Horatio Alger, young boys born into poverty rise to riches through a combination of pluck and initiative. I think overall it's a disadvantage, Jeb Bush once said. So here we're moving into a third example, right? Jeb Bush, who, is the brother of both George W. Bushes, who were president, once said of, so Jeb Bush once said of what it means for his business career that he was the son of an American president and the brother of an American president and the grandson of a wealthy Wall Street banker. He says it's a disadvantage, right? When he ran for governor of Florida, he repeatedly referred to himself as a self-made man. It is a measure of how deeply we associate success with the efforts of the individual that few batted an eye at that description. So the whole paragraph is designed to support that claim from the first sentence, right? So the pattern there, topic sentence followed by supporting detail. If we come down a little bit, here's another paragraph from the book, from Outliers. This is from page 24. And this is a paragraph that begins with background and then follows it up with the topic sentence and then goes into supporting detail. So it starts with a sentence, right? It says, the explanation for this is quite simple. And it's referring back to the paragraph prior, but it says, it continues with more background. It says, it has nothing to do with astrology, nor is there anything magical about the first 3 months of the year. It is simply that in Canada, the eligibility cutoff for age class hockey is January 1. That is the topic sentence right there. And then it follows that up with some supporting detail. A boy who turns 10 on January 2nd then could be playing alongside someone who doesn't turn 10 until the end of the year. And at that age, in pre-adolescence, a 12-month gap in age represents an enormous difference in physical maturity. So this is a short paragraph, right? It's only 4 sentences long, right? But it basically has a topic sentence that's a little bit buried in there, right? Which is just the point that the cutoff date is the most important part of, or an important part of why somebody is or isn't successful. So it has some background, gets to the topic sentence, and then it really only has one sentence that further develops it. So, I know I've been saying you have to have 11 sentence paragraphs, but Gladwell will repeatedly prove me wrong that you can, it doesn't always have to be 11 sentences, clearly. Yeah, anyway. So that's an example of background, topic sentence, supporting detail. Here's one where he starts with a question, and then the answer is the topic sentence. Do you see the consequences of the way we have chosen to think about success? Because we so profoundly personalize success, we miss opportunities to lift others onto the top rung. We make rules that frustrate achievement. We prematurely write off people as failures. We are too much in awe of those who succeed and far too dismissive of those who fail. And most of all, we become much too passive. We overlook just how large a role we all play, and by we, I mean society, in determining who makes it and who doesn't. So this one's interesting too, because in a sense he says, do you see the consequences? And in some sense, the entire paragraph that follows is these are all the consequences, right? Because we profoundly personalize success, we miss opportunities, right? So that's a consequence. We make rules that frustrate achievement. We prematurely write off people as failures. That's a consequence. And he kind of leads up to like, and most of all, we become much too passive, right? We overlook just how large a role we play. So this is an interesting one because in a sense, like if I'm annotating here, I might try and list the many consequences of the way that we think about success, right? I might say, because we, let me just say, I might say fail to get more people to the top, bad rules, uh, quickly write people off, things like that. So this is one where there's a question and the answer, it's not as easy to point to a specific sentence and say like that is the topic sentence. In some sense, it's like kind of permeates the rest of the paragraph. But if I had to pick, um, I'd probably go with the second sentence because that's a general one. Even though towards the end he says most of all we become too passive. Um, so yeah, I mean this is one that's perhaps not like the most straightforward example of how the pattern works, but you're looking for the answer to that question. Um, and then here's the let me move this one down actually so that we have it all on one screen. Okay. So here's one that ends with the topic sentence, right? And this is actually near the beginning of one of the sections in chapter 1, right? And he says, this is a book about outliers, about men and women who do things that are out of the ordinary. Over the course of the chapters ahead, I'm going to introduce you to one kind of outlier after another, to geniuses, business tycoons, rock stars, and software programmers. We're going to uncover the secrets of a remarkable lawyer, look at what separates the very best pilots from pilots who have crashed planes, and try to figure out why Asians are so good at math. And in examining the lives of the remarkable among us, the skilled, the talented, and the driven, I will argue that there is something profoundly wrong with the way we make sense of success. So in this paragraph, he's previewing what he's going to do in the book, and then at the end he tells you, and this is the main point I'm going to make, right? So he's giving you a lot of supporting details leading up to his topic sentence here at the end. Okay. Here's one where he uses a reversal. So he has the background, and then he's going to do a reversal, and then he's going to do a topic sentence. So he says, in the United States, football and basketball don't select, stream, and differentiate quite as dramatically. As a result, a child can be a bit behind physically in those sports and still play as much as his or her more mature peers. But baseball does. So he's kind of switched here, right? But baseball does. Baseball does differentiate and stream, right? And he says the cutoff date for almost all non-school baseball leagues in the United States is July 31st, with the result that more major league players are born in August than in any other month. The numbers are striking. In 2005, among Americans playing Major League Baseball, 505 were born in August versus 313 born in July. Right, the ones born in July would have been the youngest in their cohort, and they are at the greatest disadvantage. Now, I would say in this one probably it is a reversal, right? But and then baseball is the focus of the paragraph. Like here's my topic sentence and my reversal. This little sentence here. You might also make the case, like if I'm annotating here, I might say like most sports don't differentiate, but baseball does, and it shows a result. The point of this paragraph is that it's more evidence of how arbitrary cutoff dates basically disadvantage people and give advantages to some people. And here's another Q&A that he has, right, where the answer comes much later. If diet and exercise didn't explain the findings, then what about genetics? The Rosettans were a close-knit group from the same region of Italy, and Wolff's next thought was to wonder whether they were of a particularly hardy stock that protected them from disease. So he tracked down relatives of the Rosettans who were living in other parts of the United States to see if they shared the same remarkable good health as their cousins in Pennsylvania. They didn't. So in other words, did genetics explain it? It did not, right? The answer comes at the very end. So this one is question and answer. And this is a common way that this will happen where, the rest of the paragraph kind of is leading you up to the solving of the mystery question. And then, like I said, they're not always perfect, simple. The 5 patterns don't sort of like graph simply onto every single paragraph. Here's an example of one that kind of does a bit of a mix, right? So biologists often talk about the ecology of an organism. The tallest oak tree in the forest is the tallest, not just because it grew from the hardiest acorn, it's the tallest also because no other trees blocked its sunlight. The soil around it was deep and rich, no rabbit chewed through its bark as a sapling, and no lumberjack cut it down before it matured. We all know that successful people come from hardy seeds, but do we know enough about the sunlight that warmed them, the soil in which they put down the roots, and the rabbits and lumberjacks they were lucky enough to avoid? This is not a book about tall trees, it's a book about forests, and hockey is a good place to start because the explanation for who gets to the top of the hockey world is a lot more interesting and complicated than it looks. In fact, it's downright peculiar. So, in a sense, right, he does a few things in this paragraph. He starts by talking about trees, right? And then he asks a question, but could be seen as a reversal, right? But it's also a question, right? He says, but do we know enough about this stuff? And then he answers that question, right? This is not a book about trees, it's a book about the forests, and we're going to look at hockey. So I pulled this paragraph out because it's an example of where, in a sense, like the patterns kind of break down, right? They help you a little bit to follow it, right? But you can't easily say it's this pattern or it's that pattern. But what the patterns do help you do here is see the structure of the paragraph and where it's heading and what it's trying to do, right? He's Gladwell is trying to tell you that both hardiness and environment, right, impact the tree just like people, right? So there's the forest has as much impact as the individual tree on its growth, right? Think of the forest as the environment that is equivalent to like the cutoff dates or the culture or the community that a person is in. Okay, so I wanted you to see this in practice, and I'm going to ask you to do some things with these patterns this week for English 108, and these are really helpful. I find these patterns very helpful as I'm reading. They help me to quickly hone in on what a paragraph's trying to do and keep me focused as I'm reading. So I hope you find them helpful too, and good luck with all of your work this week.